Questions from the...
Hello, my name is Evren Baydar from Deutsche Pfandbriefbank. We had been mentioning lots of VAs, but I was going to ask to speakers, what about the AVA, which is the newest VA, which had been discussed under prudent valuation, and yeah, there had been two approaches, basically simplified and advanced, in order to charge value for the model risk. And if they discussed in under CVA desks, or if they didn't hear about that, under which desk was it discussed, or who is in charge, for example, to quantify this model risk in their banks? Thank you.
Okay. Any takers?
So I haven't seen anybody on the CVA or XVA desk pricing, or even looking at it, because they are. It's implicitly considered when prices or trades are consistently not 1 or 1, because you want to see just how other banks price certain risk. Where there is a discussion in the industry on model risk is on the requirement for non-cleared bilateral business on the initial margin model. And there, I think there seems to be a clear, well, as far as what I've seen, a clear trend towards the industry model instead of insisting on your own model. So this could be in a way seen as a kind of industry trend towards agreeing on a model, but not with respect to CVA or any of the other XVA components.
I mean, I would agree in that this is currently a topic which is not discussed in the front office. As I said, the prudent valuation RTS is not yet finalized, so probably nothing for the front office to worry about. The important part is already in the P&L, so that's taken care of. And model risk, at least at Decker Bank, this is something currently the risk department is thinking about and making plans how to go forward, but not even at a stage where we discuss that with the front office.
Andreas Riel, Landesbank Baden-Württemberg. Birgitta, you mentioned a nice topic that the overall industry is shrinking with regards to the derivatives business, because or the regulation, and there's more clearing out there. We will get smaller market that is actually doing this kind of business going forward. And you have less OTC market going forward. Does that automatically also mean, finally, that the XVA discussion gets smaller and smaller as well? Because all these deals that currently have all these XVAs with them will, going forward, be in clearinghouses and have collateral for it. Even maybe corporates are going towards this direction, and this kind of XVA discussion that we're seeing right now is something like a hyped last discussion of the quant world.
I don't see it as a hype, and it is a reality, because all these costs are there, and they need to be first understood and quantified and then managed. In the long run, do I think that bilateral portfolios will be as big as they are now? I don't think so. I mean, first, we've got this requirement for bilateral collateralization. So this is already a trend to reduce risk or to reduce exposure. It doesn't reduce liquidity risk, and funding considerations are still there. So I think the risk is just shifting towards something else. And as I said, Mike, I believe that the regulator's intention is to reduce business volume. I mean, that is that's whatever whenever they talk about the intention, it is to reduce the complexity and the volume in the market. So in the long run, yes, I think there will be a lot less of the CVA, KVA, and depending the extent an organization really has in CVA and KVA and all of this will depend on their business profile. So if it's an organization that does a lot of business in non-netting jurisdictions, collateralization doesn't help. So there still will be CVA and XVA and KVA funding, I think, will remain a big, in the initial margin steering and funding will be a big topic for all banks. That was a more positive answer. I'm sorry that
Good.
was more doom and gloom.
I'm very happy.
Earlier. Okay.
I'm much happy.
Yeah, the industry might not be growing, but they'll still need XVA. So, I mean, I
Yeah,
guess
yeah.
that's the positive thing about it.
XVA and to a certain, I think the CVA and KVA part will be, so the capital part will be smaller. I think FVA will be overwhelming. Or FVA or funding,
The funding
and
part,
initial
yeah.
margin funding, not FVA.
So
but-
some people, so the margining piece, some people call it MVA to sort of
Yeah.
make it a bit clearer, but
Mm.
it'll still be part of the mix, in presumably. So the trick question, of course, is like, have all the regulations reduced risk in the market?
Yeah.
Have they made things safer?
No.
No. Okay, that's a trick question. So I guess depending on who you talk to, some people say, well, all you do is move risk around, right? You're not actually reducing it, and you're moving, you move credit risk to liquidity risk, and obviously liquidity risk is much less riskier for banks, so that's why you would do that. So that was a joke.
If you look at the financial crisis, and everyone was complaining about the quants who actually were part of the reason for the crisis, with too complex models and complex deal structures, and now we're sort of 6-7 years after Lehman, and the world is much more complicated than it was before.
Yeah, much more complicated, and I think, and it's I guess that's sort of in the sense of like, the world's going to be a lot simpler with margining, but most, I think all of the banks that I can think of died from a margin call, not from a credit event. So, more margining is, doesn't mean less risk. Any other questions?
Hello, my name is Gunnar Salentin from WGZ Bank in Düsseldorf. I would be interesting to know, for your individual institutions, what do you think would make it interesting to have in the future derivative business as part of a product offering on one hand, and to what extent do you think that your organization would be willing to subsidize this business?
Interesting question.
It depends on the client relationship. We did have circumstances where, with respect to subsidizing, we had circumstances where the client was clearly told what the costs were for certain actions that were embedded in a trade, and if it's very difficult for relationship managers and for salespeople to realize. But if a relationship is not profitable and doesn't cover its costs, there is no reason to maintain it. So there is what is it called nowadays? If I was a relationship manager, I would clearly give a different answer. But the relationship needs to be beneficial for both parties. And it can't be that a relationship is subsidized on an ongoing basis. There is no rationale to do that. So there needs to be a give and take. And if it's only give, it doesn't work. If it's only take, it wouldn't work. So it needs to be a partnership. And that is, every client needs to understand that. And as I think you mentioned, there is a client, corporate or bank or financial institution shouldn't have any interest to trade with just the cheapest provider if this cheapest provider of a derivative doesn't have a viable business case in future and wouldn't survive.
Yeah, so I'd say I agree about the relationship dimension, about understanding where you're generating profitability across any banking product. I mean, I guess the other thing I'd point to is even within your derivatives business, moving away from the single trade evaluation to the understanding of the portfolio and the portfolio dynamic. And there's been some recent papers about that, and whether funding's done on a super netting set, et cetera. But the point being is that obviously once you construct a portfolio of this stuff, it kind of has arguably a certain behavior which is different than the sum of the parts. And that's kind of, can keep the quants busy, I suppose, trying to get a better grip on exactly how these things can act. But arguably in a portfolio setting, you do get some, diversification benefit offsets whatsoever, which may make the sum greater than just the components.
Maybe one additional comment. I think it's a little bit ironic that we are talking about derivative business, which, let's say, for 10 years were one of the predominant cross-selling products, where you can earn a lot of money, and now it switches, it turns completely. Yeah? So we are looking for cross-selling potential in a client relationship to do derivatives with them. So it's a little bit of irony, maybe.
Okay, any other questions? I think we're pretty much out of time. I want to thank the panel. It's very very interesting. Like I said, a lot of experienced people. Unfortunately, everybody kind of agrees with each other, so there wasn't a lot of there wasn't a huge amount of debate. I'm sure if you had a bunch of experienced quants up on this subject, you would have lots of debate. So, but that's good. So yeah, feel free. I think we're going to have some cocktails in the back. So definitely grab your favorite panelist and ask more questions during the break. Okay, thank you.